Ali, you are the Accountability and Redress Director at Mwatana for Human Rights, a Yemeni organization that has done critical work advocating for human rights, documenting civilian harm, and supporting victims of the war in Yemen. And listeners might remember that we spoke to your colleague Bunyan about civilian casualty investigations during our first season. Can you explain what you do at Mwatana?
Mwatana is a Yemeni NGO that defends human rights, and the work that we do falls into 5 main pockets. Pocket number 1 is documentation of international humanitarian law and international law of human rights violations committed by all warring parties in Yemen. And we do that through a team of field researchers that are almost in every governorate of Yemen. And they document violations on a daily basis. And then pocket number 2 is legal support. And for the legal support, we also have lawyers on the field on different Yemeni governorates, and they provide legal support, legal advice to victims of detention-related abuses. The third pocket that we do is advocacy, advocating for human rights issues inside and outside Yemen. And the fourth pocket is awareness raising, in which Mwatana tries to do further work on the community level to raise awareness of human rights and human rights violations. And the final pocket is legal action, which mainly my team works on, in which we try to do efforts in terms of accountability and redress on perpetrators involved in the war in Yemen.
And your organization has often described the war in Yemen as the forgotten war or an ignored war. Can you start by explaining what the war has looked like for civilians in the last few years and what the role of the United States has been?
Yes. So we usually say that the war in Yemen is a forgotten war because we think that the war in Yemen should have stopped a long time ago. For people who are working on Yemen and in Yemen on human rights, it's really, really frustrating because all of this that is happening, it could have stopped 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago if countries stopped fueling warring parties in Yemen with arms and use their pressure on warring parties to stop this war. We believe that there is no potential on military operations in Yemen, and it seems that it's almost blocked to be solved through military operations. But there is an international interest in the war in Yemen. And this interest is like civilians are paying the price of this interest.
Ali, do you recall a specific civilian harm incident that was caused using U.S. weapons?
Yes, there are several incidents, but I would like to speak about an incident that happened in April 2018, in which airstrike happened on a wedding party. The wedding party was in a village in Hajjah to the northwest of Yemen. Normal civilian people in a poor rural area were having a wedding party, and right in the middle of the party, the airstrikes happened. It was really a very bloody airstrikes in which 21 civilians were killed, including 11 children, and 97 injured, including 48 children and 2 women. We heard about this incident in the night of the incident, because the incident happened at 10 p.m. Next day in the morning, 3 of the team in Mwatana traveled from Sana'a to the area of the strike to join the field researcher in documentation of this incident, because it's a big incident. It requires a bigger team to work on this incident. So we met with victims, survivors, family members, and we looked into the aftermath of the airstrikes. We were able to find pieces of the remnants of the weapon used for this airstrikes, and we were able to share these, to take pictures of these weapon remnants, and then contracted a weapon expert to do analysis of the weapon used. The result of analysis that the expert made says that this weapon is US made. It's GPU 12 Baveway 2, laser guided bomb with MK82 warhead. It should be a precise bomb, and like the targeting this wedding with such bomb, it should be intentional, because it's not a bomb that can be some sort of indiscriminate attack, because the bomb is laser guided. It should be very precise.
And you talked about speaking with victims and survivors and documenting the aftermath. Can you talk a little bit more about what that aftermath has looked like for those families impacted?
It's the wedding was in almost like something like a tent next to a house. The area was poor area. People didn't have public services. Like all they have are their small houses, and this airstrike just ruined the house, killed too many people. Like when you meet with people in after the strikes, you see how different people have different sufferings. Like we met with the mother of the groom, and she was really sad about what happened to the wedding. We also met another woman who lost her tool that she used to put the cow milk inside, and she was really feeling sad about her tool, because it's almost part of her food security, and it's not easy for her to get another tool. Maybe to other people, this type of suffering, to Saudis or to Americans, is nothing, but to this woman it was really a sad moment.
And based on what we know about U.S. support during the war, I imagine that this story is sadly not very unique. Is this something that Mwatana has documented frequently? U.S. or weapons from other exporters being used in this kind of harm?
Yes, this incident is part of a report that we published with support of Pax for Peace. The report highlights 27 incidents in which Mwatana were able to find remnants of the weapon used. Speaking of finding the remnants, it's really not an easy thing to find the remnants of the weapon used. We face too many challenges to do that. All the cases that Mwatana were able to find the remnants used are not more than 30 cases, while Mwatana has already documented more than 1,000 cases of airstrike committed by the Saudi UAE-led coalition, and like the number of cases that we were able to find the weapon remnants is really a very small fraction of the number of cases that we have documented. And we always say that what we have documented is not everything. Within our capacities, we can't document everything. We're just locally many NGO, we can't document everything. But speaking of the high disproportionality between what we have found the remnants for and what we haven't, there might be a very big chance to find weapons that were made in other areas in the world. We usually read and hear and research about countries that support the warring parties in Yemen with weapons, but what we have found until now evidence for is the US, the UK, Italy. And I'm sure that if we were able to find more remnants, if we were able to work in better conditions, we might see other countries involved in the war in Yemen.
And we've been talking now, of course, about the use of U.S. weapons or weapons from other countries being used directly in a strike. But of course, U.S. support for warring parties has been broader than that. Can you talk a little bit about what that other support has looked like and how Mwatana has approached that?
Unfortunately, what we have worked on military support is only through the weapon remnants that we find, because this is what falls under our methodology, what's like something that we can research on. Mainly our work is on the field, but still supporting the countries involved in Yemen is really critical in keeping the war moving forward or stopping the war. I have been in a panel last year with a researcher from Spain who was speaking about how important is the technical support for the coalition to continue their airstrikes, and he stated that all the new high technology fighter jets cannot operate for more than 5 days without technical support. So there are many countries in the world can stop the war in Yemen just by stopping this technical support, stopping the transfers of weapons to Yemen.
And that's obviously a very real, practical impact in allowing the war to continue. What do you see as the political signal that support also sends? It's a very clear signal that despite what you have done in Yemen, you still can do further. There is other signals that happens. So now we have like warring parties in Yemen. They have a signal to continue the war, because there are still countries that support them with weapons. There are countries that support them with military technical support. And also last year we lost the only independent UN mechanism investigating on human rights violations in Yemen, the GEE. So the GEE started its mandate to investigate on human rights violations in Yemen in 2017. Unfortunately, in 2021, member states of the Human Rights Council did not renew the mandate of the GEE, the group of eminent experts, and we lost the only independent UN mechanism researching, documenting, and reporting on Yemen. This also is another signal for warring parties to continue, and it was really clear that after the termination of the mandate, which happened in October 2021, there was a very high escalation in the number of airstrikes starting in November 2021. That led to many bloody airstrikes from November until beginning of 2022. One of these cases was a case in which the Saudi UAE-led coalition launched an airstrike on a detention facility in the north of Yemen, in Sa'da, and the result was over 250 human casualties between deaths and injuries. And why do you think that this kind of support, from the U.S., for example, why do you think the support has continued despite clear evidence of harm, like so much of what's found in your reporting?
I think because there are governments that have chosen economical interest over human rights. There are countries that thinks of more national income than thinking of human rights and the lives of others somewhere else in the world.
And I want to go back a little bit to the story that you told about the strike on the wedding party. I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about the detail of what it was like to find those weapon remnants and kind of how you went about that specific documentation process and what it was about what you found that helped you know what it was or helped the weapon expert know what it was.
Our team is trained how to deal with weapon remnants, because these weapon remnants can be sharp, can be hazard, can sometimes explode again. But they know how to deal with these weapon remnants, and then they know how to take pictures of these weapon remnants. Like, for example, one of the tips that they use is to put a pen next to the weapon remnant. This will help the weapon expert to know the dimensions of this piece, because the pens all over the world have the same size, which is 12 to 14 centimeters. And this helps the weapon expert to know the dimensions of this piece. Like, they know how to take pictures of which pieces of the weapon should take a picture of, which angle they should take, making sure that there is enough contrast between the background and the color of the weapon remnant, and also to make sure that the device that they're taking the picture with is taking the metadata for this picture. So the cell phone or the camera that they're taking the picture with is taking the date, time, and location of the caption inside the metadata. This will help us for accountability work. If we go for any legal action, then there is it's easy to prove the crime base, that there is this weapon piece that we found it in this location and this date, and then you can go to Google Earth and check before and after and see the destruction clear on the satellite imagery.
Did the survivors of the strike know that it was using a U.S. bomb?
The survivors, we have been in contact with the survivors for several times. Unfortunately, the survivors had money paid from the coalition as condolence payments. It was very small amount of money, and unfortunately, the Houthi armed group that controls the area knew about this payment, and then they detained them. So we were not able later on to speak with the families again, but I know that some of them know that the weapon was American. To them, like, whether it was made in America or it was made in UK or it was made in France or any other place in the world, this doesn't change the reality that they lost their beloved ones, they lost their house, and they really need reparations to take place, and also accountability for perpetrators and people who were involved and explicit in this war.
Yeah. So that actually brings me to my next question, which is about, your asks for the warring parties, but also, because we're focusing on arms transfers today, I'm also curious about your asks, especially for the U.S. government and other governments that are providing this kind of support to the warring parties.
For U.S. governments and other governments as well, our ask is to stop military support, weapon transfers to warring parties in Yemen, to all warring parties in Yemen. And our asks even goes beyond that. We're expecting from them to be more active on establishing a mechanism, criminally focused mechanism to investigate on war crimes in Yemen, and also to push for peace in Yemen. Countries like US, UK, France, they have very strong relationships with countries that are involved in the war in Yemen, and they can have leverage to push for peace in Yemen. And I don't think this is something impossible for them. I think it's something very easy to reach. Then I think they should use this leverage, and they should push for peace in Yemen, and also to make sure that accountability and redress for victims takes place in the future.